Now, being based in New York, which is kind of just barely getting like real credibility with Silicon Valley, in many ways, we're not taken very seriously because we don't have as much technologists as Silicon Valley does, like real core engineering. A lot of the traction is not because of, you know, like stunning intellectual property, like algorithmic and machine learning stuff. It's just like really clever kind of business models with technology at the core, but the technology isn't, you know, anything wildly inventive, to be honest. I see a lot more exciting technology stuff happening here. But the point is that, you know, being the underdog for funding and for technology growth is actually a strength and not a weakness, because when people's expectations are low and then you just overshoot them by like exponential levels, that's going to really turn a lot of heads and get a lot of people's attention. I think the important thing, you know, for Gus, we have a tremendous amount of usage in Europe because there's so many high net worth individuals that are really writing checks into startups because they're more kind of, I think, risk tolerant than a lot of the high net worths here in India. And they're also looking for better investments than the local economies can provide them. And the products, to be honest with you, are mostly like completely boring, terrible ideas that work only within the weird kind of European consumer mindset. Nothing earth-shattering. I mean, I've seen a lot of startups in Europe, and everybody's talking about like Berlin and London. I had the opportunity to go kind of lead something much like StartupVillage in East London, and I spent some time there and met with some of the companies, and I just couldn't believe what pieces of shit like were getting funded there. I think it's the opposite problem here. It's like it's hard to decide what's most interesting and most worthy of investment. You know, if you had to pick just one, it would be really difficult because a lot of you guys are working on such really fascinating stuff, and the constraints placed on you are making you innovate in much more creative ways than you see in kind of Western locations. You've got like some technology around like graphic animation and creating like levels and like stories of a game, then that's something different, you know, and then that's a different story, in which case you have to like pitch that to investors that are really excited about that type of thing. Yeah. And you can even, I mean, and then if that's a story, I mean, then you can just like market that and try and get that covered on some gaming blogs and get that in front of, again, the right eyes and create some awareness. And then when you send emails to people and you ask for an intro, you've got something to be like, look, like this is what we do, and it's being recognized as pretty awesome, right? That would be how I would try and do that, if that's what you have.
Yep, I think, thanks Justin.
Yeah, great.
So I've got Jeff on next. So Jeff is the founder of Presley, and if you can... Co-founder. Yeah. So if you can just tell
Yeah,
the story.
sure. You know, I mean, first it's my first time in India, and I gotta say, like, just blown away. Like, way exceeded my expectations. It's been really inspiring. Sanjay and Gautam and the rest of the Mommy team have been phenomenal hosts, so yeah, I'm really excited about coming back. So like Sanjay said, I founded a company called Presley. I'll give you a little bit of background of how I got to this point, and then maybe, you know, at the Mommy office we discussed about some of the lessons that, or mistakes that we have made in the past, and I'll just kind of list some of those. So, in university I went for software engineering at a school called McMaster. It's a pretty well recognized software engineering school. And, you know, at that school, IBM was probably the biggest hire of the engineers, followed by, you know, maybe Microsoft. I never wanted to go work at another company. You know, as soon as I started there, I had to put myself through school, so I was doing a lot of consulting work. And I was lucky enough to meet one of my best friends, who's also my now co-founder, and we were very much so on the same page. You know, both of us had done software consulting in the past, and we knew we wanted to build a big company. We just had this belief that we could do it. One of the unfortunate things is that in Toronto at the time, And even to this day, it's not the Silicon Valley, right? So I had no idea about doing fundraising, no concept of that. So what we decided to do instead was to start a consulting company, because we knew how to make money doing that. And the goal was at some point, we're going to transition to a product company. So we started the company, the two of us, in our last year of school. And we built pretty much anything you can think of. People came to us to build children's games. We built warehouse tracking software, a wide range of things. Luckily, we started getting into the mobile space. So iPhone, amazing product. We wanted to be a part of that. So this sports company, which had a television station in Toronto, came to us and said, we have this app out in market. We're not happy with it. We need to take it to the next level. And so they came to us and asked us to build it. And so we spent a lot of time on that app. I think it was at least a year, perhaps more. And it was quite successful. So it was, as Sanjay mentioned, I think it was the App Store Sports App of the Year, one of Time's top 50 apps. And we put everything we had into building this. No detail was too small. We said, we're going to build the best sports app in the world. And we went out there and we accomplished it. And what happened was, and I'm really happy for them, but they took that app and then they went and did a raise, most recently of $16 million, to take that app to the next stage. And so Peter and I, we're looking at this and it's like, we're really happy.
Jeff's co-founder.
Yeah, Peter's my co-founder. So it's like, we're really happy about that because we built it and feel really proud, but at the end of the day, that's not our product, right? It's not our company. So we decided, we're going to build our own product. We are never going to do a consulting company again. We're going to actually close down our consulting company and we're going to focus. Luckily, for the past 2 years before we had done this, in addition to building the Score app, we were starting our own products. So the first one we built was something called CrowdReel, and the idea behind it was to see what's happening around you. So the way we decided to solve that was Twitter is about 3 years ago, so it wasn't where it was today. It was still quite popular, and people were sharing tons of photos on it. So we said, what if we could capture every photo uploaded to Twitter, who said it, where they said it, make it searchable in real time, geolocate it, and we did it. And it got us a lot of really good attention. The Twitter people took notice. They flew us out there to see about joining the team. But again, we had no idea about how to raise money. So we didn't end up doing it. We just kind of let the project just stagnate. And then we started working on another product because the iPad had come out. And we saw a real opportunity to help publishing companies deliver better content experiences on the iPad. So we started working in this, mid-2010. We were invited to TechCrunch Disrupt as one of the semi-finalists to launch in San Francisco. And we launched it. Everyone was like blown away because what we'd done is we decided to do HTML5 instead of native apps. So we were able to deliver an in-browser content experience that was probably better than anything else out there at the time. And again, though, we had no concept of kind of like, well, should we raise money? How do we go about this? So we kept our consulting company, and we kept building this up, but then that, the success with the Score happens, and we noticed that, Pressly's kind of just stagnated, because we haven't been able to focus as much time on it. And we really made a decision, we want Pressly to either blow up, be extremely successful, or we want it to just end. Because we don't, the worst thing is to just keep eking along. We either want to fail fast, or we want to make a big company. So what we decided to do was actually close down our consulting company, which was making all of our money, and we decided to go do a fundraising. And so we went around New York. We didn't go to the Valley because we were just doing a small raise. We decided to raise from some Canadian VCs. We did this back in January of 2013, and we launched the product. And it's going extremely well. The team, we actually shrunk the team down to be able to focus on one product instead of trying to do too many things. We reduced the size of our team. And we're really excited about where Pressly's going. So it started off with publishers like The Economist, PC Mag, Ziff Davis, but we've recently shifted our focus to brands and helping companies do better content marketing. Because all brands are now realizing, and it kind of goes to your question about marketing, if you can create content that your potential customers or current customers care about, that's a better way to connect with them than static display ads. So what we do now is we help them create these really compelling content experiences that work across smartphones, tablets, and desktop. And one of the things that we do that's pretty interesting, we're actually just launching a new version of it at the start of November, is it's all about curation now. So you can plug in any type of content feed, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, RSS, and pull in all that content and kind of curate these types of experiences. So that's where we're at today with Presley. Things are going really well, and we're going to keep pushing forward on that. In terms of some of the things, I think lessons that we've learned, I would say, and Sanjay talked a lot about this, both of us, we talked about this a lot today, was the importance of culture within a company. Something I don't think I had a good idea when we first started the business, but it's really important that because culture of a company, it takes work to establish and to improve. It doesn't just happen. And so if you can create a culture where people love coming into work and they're passionate and they feel ownership over what they're building, you're going to be a lot more successful. Successful in keeping them around longer. So it's very competitive for talent where we are in Toronto. Everyone's always trying to hire the top designers and developers. So it's really important that you create a space where people love to come into work and they're passionate about it. High salaries and money is only one way to do that. In fact, I don't even think that's the strongest way. I think when people feel that they're working for a cause or part of a bigger, something that can be bigger than them, that's what inspires people. And that's what I was really impressed with Sanjay. When we're out and we're talking, I'm hearing this guy, and he's like, I'm going to do something massive. We're going to start this huge ecosystem here in India, and no one's going to do it for us, so we're going to do it ourselves. We're going to build the StartupVillage. And that is awesome, because that's exactly what you have to do. No one's going to hand it to you, but there's no excuse why, you guys can't be building the world's best products. It's all about focus. It's all about that having that mantra behind your company that, no detail is too small, or we're going to build the best, game, or we're going to build the best, design platform. Whatever you guys are working on here, it's like there's no excuses, right? It's going to be tougher. That makes it that much more rewarding when you guys get there. The other thing I think we've learned is that, particularly when you're starting a project, something new, a small team is much more effective than having a really big team. Because managing people are difficult. It's very difficult to keep people on the same page. So we definitely have realized, and we find that when we start off having only a couple, one or two developers involved on a certain part to lay that foundation, and then you can kind of bring the team in as you look. And you look at the success of, say, an Instagram, $1 billion company, there were 13 people when they got acquired, something around that, which is really impressive. I think some of the other things we've learned is that it's not everything takes longer than you expect. So I really realized it's not a race. We're not working 100 hours a week. We're not working 7 days a week, because we realize, this is a marathon that we're part of, and we don't want to get burned out. We want to stay passionate. We still work super hard, but we're very focused. And it's, I got to say, every time I think, a product's going to take us 3 months to build it, it always takes 5. Or it's going to take us 3 months to figure out what these clients want, it takes 6. And that's okay. I think you just got to be prepared and make sure you give yourself the runway to do that. Other things, design is super important. I think, that's something, when some of the startups I've met here, some of them are really starting to understand, but it can improve significantly from here. When you're building a product that someone's going to interact with, even if it's enterprise, the expectations are much higher now. That people want easy to use products, they want products that look good, and that's a really great way to make a splash. One of the reasons the Score app did so well is because the design we chose to use was very innovative at the time. Every single piece of that app was completely custom built. Much harder to do. It took us a lot longer, cost more money, but we did it because we're going to build the best sports app we can. And because of that, people would see this and be like, this thing is amazing. I love how this works. I love the UX behind this. So, I certainly, we value design very highly. And I think that's something you guys need to, everyone needs to pay attention to. What else? I think that the design stuff also comes to like craftsmanship. So, we really like to encourage the idea that, as developers, we're like craftsmen. We're no different than an architect or our sculptor, an artist, a painter. This is our art, and so we take a lot of pride in it. And we use the best tools for the job. So everyone at Presley, everyone uses a Mac. We use the latest technologies that we can get our hands on. So right now we're using something called AngularJS and EmberJS. It's all these new emerging JavaScript frameworks. Because I think in order to really develop world-class products, you need to be using the best tools. And I guess finally, one of the things from a development standpoint is the importance of architecture and really laying a strong foundation. So we subscribe to MVP. We're always trying to cut down the number of features we're doing and focus. But that doesn't mean we take shortcuts on, the quality of the product.
The making of a product, do you go lean or just do it at one time? Or you consider with others and go lean and then rebuild it at the end?
I mean, because a lot more people will watch this video later on, can you just explain for a simple layman, how do you build a product?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, how do you build a world-class
that's a tough question. I think it starts with culture. It starts with, you need to believe that you're going to be building a world-class product. You really need to have that mindset because so much attention to detail, so much iteration and improvements. You're only going to do that if you're really passionate about building something that's going to be great. And that's only one way of doing it. You don't have to necessarily build the most beautiful product. It just happens that that's what we want to do. That's what gets me passionate. And I look at something, I'm always like, this can be better. In terms of the product roadmap, like the process,
the team.
Yeah, the team. I mean, we have really great designers, and they focus on one thing. They focus specifically on the kind of design. We don't have them doing CSS or HTML. It's like, let's pick someone who's the best person we can find at creating these beautiful and well-designed products. We have front-end engineers. Really, the whole software landscape in terms of the way web apps are being built are shifting quite a bit. So we used to use Ruby and Rails to build these web apps. We've now shifted more to single-page application style of creating these apps. So it's very JavaScript heavy. Everything's being processed there on the client. It's not, sending the requests to the servers. We have a product manager. That's an incredibly important role because he's kind of, he helps communicate what I'm wanting to do and the BD team and the marketers with the engineers. My co-founder really, fulfills that role as product manager, as well as we have a specific product manager who works alongside him to do that, as well as some of the product management stuff. We do actually a couple things. So we have these month planning sessions. So we spend a day and we plan out what we want to get done for this month. And then every week we have a meeting, every Monday, what's going to get done that week. So everyone is around the table, we say, here's what I'm going to get done, here's what I'm going to get done. So we're all on the same page with that. Then we have daily stand-ups, where everyone kind of talks about what they did yesterday, what they're about to do today, very short. And then actually the best thing that we've done, not the best thing, one of the best parts of the process that we've introduced is something called an all hands. And we didn't come up with this, I think I read about this somewhere. But what we do is every Friday we get the entire team together, right? And we demo what was built that week. So, if a designer came up with a new design, he's going to show that. If a developer implemented a new feature, he's going to go over that. I talk about the business side, or one of our marketing people will talk about what's happening on the marketing side. And we're very transparent as a team, because I think it's really important to have a full understanding of where the company is and what the company's doing. Even if you may be, a back-end engineer, it's important to know, what's happening in the other parts of the company. So that's something that we do. We have some beers and we sit around, and we always do that on a Friday afternoon. So it's a really great way to lead into the weekend. I think everyone finds it really invigorating and inspiring. Here's what we did. great job. You know, can't wait to get back here next week. You know, we've tried all the different tools, all the different project management tools out there, all the different methodologies. You know, lean, agile, extreme programming, and really we've taken little bits of each. You know, I don't think there's any one where it's like if you follow it 100% is what you should do. We've tried them out and we've adopted what we felt worked with some, and then some of them, you know, they have certain things that we don't like and we don't use those. I think what sums it up though. I think it really starts though with like the focus, the attention to design, the attention to details, and really bringing, you know, passionate people around to build something great.
Okay. Does anybody want to shoot?
So the team's about 17 people.
And how's it distributed?
So there's myself, CTO, COO. We have a marketer. We have a client success person, so she works really closely with all of our clients to make sure that they're happy. We have that project manager. We have 2 designers. And then we have, you know, 4 or 5 back-end engineers and then 5 or 6 front-end engineers. And so the technologies we use, as I mentioned, you know, Angular, Ember, we use Scala on the back end, we use some Ruby. You know, it's always about using these cutting-edge technologies. We look a lot to the open source. Even our company, you know, if you look under New Layer, or maybe under Presley now, we've open sourced a lot of projects. Because that's like something people feel good about. And that's also how we do a lot of recruiting. So I love to see when any engineer's been doing open source projects, because that just to me shows passion and it gives you a really good way to evaluate what they're doing.
So, about consumer apps, how do you really go into the consumer space? How do you go meet your consumers and tell them this is the product? How do you do it in the mobile space?
Right, how do you get attention? I think that's a really tough thing, and I certainly don't have the answer to that.
Where do you want to begin?
Where do I?
Someone just makes an app, where do I start?
Well, there's a couple like obvious places you can start. You know, in the past we've leveraged things like TechCrunch or some of the other tech blogs who are always hungry for content. They always want to write about a startup happening. And you know, whenever we launch a product, we put it out there and we always see a big spike in traffic. To me, the best marketing is organic, right? So if you can reach out, if you're building a consumer product, what type of consumer product? And this kind of goes back to what Justin was saying. So if it's a product for moms, then reach out to some of the publications that write for moms. You know, some of the websites, some of the magazines, and see if they're interested in your product. And there's way smarter people out there who've talked a lot about this type of subject, but you know, you got to help them make the story interesting. So what's the approach you want to take, and then get out there. But that type of free media is definitely been, in our experience, the most valuable. Right now, we're doing a lot of direct marketing, a lot of email marketing, because we're building an enterprise platform with Presley. And again, there's a lot of good resources out there to do that. So I think the more you can get people who would care about your product to write about it, that seems like a good place to start.
How much does localization help?
Oh. I think it's pretty important. You know, I mean, we have a couple clients in other parts of the world, and we certainly, you know, we allow for full localization of the languages. Certainly, I mean, I think you've even seen really...
In your application, how many different languages are
in Presley, it's because they're running their own content, they can localize it however they want, right? The score, it's only in English. And the reason they've done that is because they're focused on one market at a time. And I think you've seen a lot of big startups fail at actually going into different global markets because it's extremely difficult, and if you don't have people there on the ground, it can be really tough. You know, I think it's like, you know, Alibaba killed eBay in China, right? And that's just because they understood the market better, they understood how to roll it out better. I think any North American company would have a much harder time creating a consumer product for India, right? I think you'd have a much better idea of how to build products for the space. But then you look at some products like Facebook, which have been extremely successful doing it. So, I guess it's just a balance.
When you started the earlier first product, was the monetization part of the plan itself? You knew how it was going to make money?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something, because even Canadians were more cautious than Americans. And I think our investors were like, where's the monetization angle to this? And if I could do it all over again, I'm not sure I would have paid as much attention to that. I would have probably taken a bigger risk, but it's good. You see this. I think there's the same type of mindset here in India, where how are you going to make money and show monetary traction? Whereas in the U.S., growth is probably the most important factor, and then as you grow, you can figure out how to monetize. But there's a lot of money in the U.S. to be deployed to build up companies to then figure out how to monetize.
What do you think of the Google Glass after Samsung smartwatch?
I don't think anyone can doubt that wearable tech at some point is going to be extremely widely adopted. I certainly don't think it's either of those two products. I thought the Samsung watch was a bit of a step backwards. It's not a watch I even want to wear. So, same with Google Glass. I'm not going to walk around downtown Toronto wearing Google Glass, right? But I certainly think some of the more interesting ones are ones, there's no screens on them, but they kind of do biometrics. So it's like, here's your heart rate, here's the time of the day that you're most stressed out. Here's, that to me is really interesting. But, like I said, I think you'd be crazy to think that at some point wearable tech isn't going to be.
So, the simple dumb question, did you ever write a business plan?
I fucking hate business plans. I don't know if I've ever really created one. I think in school once we had to create a business plan. We definitely have documented things, and I find a PowerPoint or Keynote deck is actually the best way to create a business plan. The worst is, just as 100 stacks of paper that's a brick weight that never gets looked at. I think you got to use stuff that people are going to be able to continually update, because the business plan is going to change, it's going to evolve. It's important to have it documented, but I actually like to use a slide deck to put that together. And it's usually like a 15 slide deck. But that's not my strength either. My investors also want me to be doing more spreadsheets and all that stuff. And it's something I'm learning, but it's, my focus is on the product and growing it.
So do you have, when you start the product, do you have how much revenue will it make, or do you have a vague idea how much revenue?
Yeah, and we all know it's all total BS. I mean, you got to do it for the pitch deck where you show a growth curve like this, and we're gonna be making $100 million in 6 months. But it never works out that way, and that's why I don't spend too much time on all these.
Almost everything is now documented and available.
I think we have some great advisors to our company that we speak a lot with. My co-founder and I, we talk a lot, talk every day about just, it's good to have someone to vent to talk through issues, because things definitely come up. I think it's almost like climbing a mountain where you can't see the top, because if you saw how high it was, you would never even start trying to climb it. And it's definitely that, it's always more work than you think. It always takes longer, but you just can't focus on it. You gotta focus, one day at a time. Just cross it.
Cool. So, is there anybody else who wants to ask anything more? Cool, okay. So I think we'll wrap that up. Okay. So.